Usually, the most difficult part of adopting a new Java language feature is to figure out the pieces in your existing code base that could be replaced with the new feature. To do that, you must know a couple of things, such as, of course, what? The syntax of the new feature, exact old code that could be replaced. And of course, to understand the reason to do that, why would you want to do that? The impact it might have. All of these sound relevant, right? But am I asking too much from you? Because as a developer, you have a busy schedule. And it's not just the core Java that has newer versions. You need to catch up with what's happening elsewhere too. Libraries, frameworks, there's so many stuff out there. Do you think IntelliJ IDEA could help you in any way to adopt Java 22 language features? Or are you wondering whether you should even care about these new features? Those are good questions. What about the answers? Usually, I host sessions on IntelliJ IDEA live streams and invite a speaker to answer questions. It's different today. I was tricked into it because I'm presenting too. So, hi everyone, thanks for joining in for another IntelliJ IDEA live stream. I'm both your host and the speaker today. Why not another host? We were trying to kind of figure out to do something funny, which didn't work out. So here I am, both the host and the speaker. Sorry, Marit. Before I start with the session, let me share some quick housekeeping details. Everyone, please use the YouTube chat to post your questions. I will answer the questions towards the end of the session. Bas from the IntelliJ IDEA team would answer your questions as you type them. Yes, the session is being recorded and will be hosted on IntelliJ IDEA's YouTube channel. So if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, now is the time to do so. And if you are able to learn anything new from today's session, do not miss to like the video. And now let me add my screen to the stream. So yes, in today's session, I will be talking about Java 22 language features, starting with string templates, which is string interpolation with verification and validation of the values that you embed into the string literals and overall structure of the final value that you get. You don't really have to use only the strings after the interpolation. That could be anything, a JSON object or anything else. And this is also one of my favorite features. And what about the other one? So if you are, sorry, what was that? If you are one who's teaching Java to new students or one of the people who are getting started with learning Java, you would like this feature. Implicit classes and instance main methods. It's here to reduce the ceremony that is required for getting started to learning Java. And then we'll talk about unnamed pattern variables. Have you used pattern matching in Java or records? If you haven't, you must, because that kind of opens a different kind of possibilities that we have programming in Java. And unnamed pattern and variables, they help in that area. Statements before super. I haven't seen a single programmer who hasn't used kind of a workaround in their derived class constructors to call the superclass constructor with validations or other transformation. That is going to change with the feature which is statements before super. And with that done, I just covered the kind of the agenda that we have. Let's see what else do we have. Of course, what details would I cover for all these features? Of course, I'll talk about what the feature is. That would also mean I would talk about the syntax of the feature and the semantics. What do you mean by those two terms, and what is the difference? So yesterday, my daughter asked, "What is the difference between syntax and semantics?" So I told her, "You're small, you have two eyes, two legs, arms, you're cute." So that would be the syntax part. But you are a devil, irritating, clingy, also the universe, my universe, the reason I live. So that would be the semantics. So whenever we talk about a new language feature, people kind of get overwhelmed by the syntax, or they just kind of focused on the syntax part. And most of the developers would not consider what does the feature bring to their code base. So that is the semantics part, how it impacts the code base. And of course, the reason why anyone should care about a new feature, that would really depend on how often you use the feature, the impact it has, and do you use that directly or indirectly. For an example, for everyone watching, if you have used the string class in Java, type yes, so that I know string templates would be one of the features that you should be kind of looking out for, because if you do not use a string template yourself, probably you would be using or reading code which would be using string templates. Every new feature exists because they are here to solve some pain points, and this is also what I would cover for each of these topics with hands-on examples. Anti-patterns, of course, no one should be abusing features. Uh, Overdoing features in a way that they should not be used is one of the ways to kind of not use them optimally, and I also have a couple of examples to talk about this one. What else do we have? Of course, to use Java 22 language features, within IntelliJ IDEA, you need to have two things, IntelliJ IDEA and Java 22. I already have IntelliJ IDEA because this is what I'm using right now. And to talk about configuring IntelliJ IDEA with Java 22, let's quickly see what the settings are. So I could go to project structure and make sure you have your JDK as 22. If you do not already have 22 on your system, not a problem. You can use the download JDK option, select the version and the vendor. And once you do that, uh, you can download, and IntelliJ IDEA would also install that on your system. Because I already have it, I am not using it right now. And once you do that, and when you come back to this dialog, you would see the downloaded JDK in here. Language level, the two language levels here, preview for Java 22, preview and unnamed, non-preview. So the two categories, a lot of features that I just mentioned, they are being previewed in Java 22, which means it's a complete feature, but not permanent. So it might change before it is made a production feature. The others, like the unnamed variables and patterns, that's a production feature. So let me set it to Java 22 preview, and same goes for the module as well. So we are done now, and the configuration part is done and out of our way so that we don't have to worry about it. What next? Okay, time to start with string templates. As I mentioned, when I talk about string templates, it's about to kind of take away all the pain that we have when we are concatenating string values with variable values. We have multiple ways to do that, but each one of them has some problem or the other. So string templates includes multiple things. One is interpolation with verification and validation. I know big terms. Let's see, what do they mean? This is an example of a verified JSON data. What you see here is JSON data that you can say is correctly formed. What about a JSON data which is not correctly formed? This is one of the examples, because I have three commas here, which would make it data which is not correctly structured. Let's look at another example. Now I am talking about a JSON data value where the values are probably not valid. So this one is valid data and this one is invalid data, because I'm talking about details of, I think this is about a voter. And if the age is minus 25 or the polling code is blank, that means that the data is not valid. What else do we have? So, of course, I mentioned this. Why should you care about any new Java feature or any feature for that reason? That really depends on how it affects your code base and how often do you use that. And to answer that question, I would really like if you could type in the chat the multiple ways you have been using the concatenation before. So what are the options? Type yes in the chat if you have ever used, let's say, the plus operator. What are the other ways of concatenating? If anyone could help me with that. I think we do have string builders, append method. What else? We have string classes for formatted method. What else? What was the last one? Message format. Message format. And what was the name of the method? Formatted, format. Uh, does anyone know? Okay. Formatted, format. Oh, I'm looking at the comments. Okay. Michael, you could help me. Yes, Mike. Okay, I think that's format. Okay, format. So we have been using um, all these ways to concatenate strings before concatenating constant values with variable values, but all of them have some problem or the other, which we'll see. So let's see what else do we have. Of course, did we forget SQL injections? That could happen when variable values are embedded into SQL queries, and the resultant query that is formed that could result in an SQL injection. Here, if you see, could anyone tell me would that be an SQL injection or not? Because this is a trick question. Yes or no? Okay. So I see a lot of yes, Matthias, Louis, David saying yes, but no, because what I did was there is no space between transactions and where. So what this will not delete the data. So that's another problem that we have with concatenation. When we use the plus operator, we kind of miss the missing space. Miss the missing space. Wow, that's interesting. So what else do we have? Examples, email and JSON. And why do I not have the images here? Was that here or no? Live coding is fun. I like that. Let's see if I have that in the local history. Oh my God. Local history. Where did I save the images? Oh, this is fun. Lots of modifications to the same file. Oh, I am never going to find that. So let me see if I already have presentation somewhere. Oh my God. Oh, yes. Oh, okay. So I'm switching to another format. That's okay. So this is an email that I received a few days before. If anyone could point out any problems that they could see with the email, um, um, probably something that they are missing or some different case that should not be there. Okay, so let me just move to the next slide so that we can see all the answers. The first name is all caps. There are missing spaces within the literal text, which is, let's say, for, and April, again, missing spaces. So this could be a problem when we are using the concatenation operator, the plus operator, to combine the literal values and the variable values, because that is not very visible. Well, I have an example to show that to you. Now, this is an example of JSON data. We all work with JSON and XML data all the time. Do you see any problem here? At a glance, it might not look as if there's a problem, but now if we go to the next image, you can see the latitude value is way out of the range. So that's another way when we are combining the variable data with literal data. And while we are embedding the values, string templates could be used to validate the values. It could be used to verify the constructs which are generated. So, okay. So I'm starting with the demo, but there's one line. There would be changes to string templates, of course, because it's a preview language feature, but also because Brian Getz, the Java language architect, mentioned that they've received a lot of feedback on this feature, and they are kind to do an overhaul of the feature. The goals would remain the same. So probably in the next version, you might see a difference in the syntax on how this feature would be used, but the goal remains the same. So with that, let me hop on to my IDE and see what do we have. So this is an example. So I'm talking about example of string concatenation. So this is being highlighted because IntelliJ IDEA can already kind of determine that this is the code that could be replaced with a string template. I'll make the change, but I'll revert because I want to talk about the other options which exist. So when you see the code is being underlined, you can use Alt and Enter and use the option. The first option here is replace with string template. When I do that, I get a much um, I would say concise code, but let's revert and see what other options do we have. Oh, the code is not compiling. This is okay. So let's see what we can do here. Did you see that line? Did you see that line? So that's full line code completion in IntelliJ IDEA 2024.1. If you haven't tried that, you must. My IDE was able to determine that logger was not defined and it generated code to define that. I think that sounds perfect. Wow. So what next? Let me create a main method here and let's call this method. Now, can you see that? Again, I get string concatenation. And what values do I get? So let me say new string this is string concatenation dot process order. Again, if you see, when I say process order, I already get the list of dummy values. Again, this is full line code completion. You must try out that feature. If I run this code, this would probably not generate any output because in this line of code, I'm talking about if quantity is less than 0, but here the quantity is 10. So let's change that. And let's make it -10. I want to change the value to A. And let's see what the value is printed when I run this code. This is a regular code that you would write a lot of times. You log a value depending on the input that you are receiving in a method. Okay. Why is this happening? As I said, these are fun. So let's, for the time being, just kind of comment that out and see if we could go back and see if this works now, or we would have to comment out more code. We will see. Okay. So now, while this is compiling, yes, and we have the result. Now, if you look at this code, what we see here is a lot of issues because we have missing spaces, which are kind of not easy to figure out. Let's say, what other options do we have? I could replace this with string builder. Wow, this looks interesting, but why do I still have? Okay. I love live coding, right? So when I use the string builder method append, the code is much more, I would say, easy to read, but it still is verbose, and I still cannot figure out if I'm missing a space at the end of a string value, literal or not. So let's see what other options do we have. Let me try replace using replace plus with formatted. That sounds interesting because I could hop on to these placeholders and IntelliJ IDEA would highlight that %d here is for quantity and %s is for product, but I still have to kind of hop between the variable values that I'm using and the literal values. I'm not so happy with this one. Let's see if we have something else. And let me use replacing plus with message format dot format. Again, I would say not so much because again, I have to hop between, figure out what the placeholder is used. Let's see if we have any better options here. So now let me revert the code and replace it with a string template. This looks much better because the value that is being embedded in a string literal, the name of the variable is right there. So what I could do is I don't have to figure out which variable value goes where, and I could insert the spaces. Of course, I cannot insert it at a wrong place because then it will be a compilation error. So that is okay. So I could do that, and this looks good. Let's see what the results are. I think that should be much better than the last time. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so yes, this is much better. We are able to determine which variable value is going, and of course, we covered the spaces too. One was left before the comma, which is okay, done. This is done too. Now, a lot of time when a lot of developers are reading the code, a lot of flack is received for the kind of syntax that is used for the variable names. That's okay. IntelliJ IDEA could help. Let's say for product here, I could use a backslash, and when I use the opening brace, IDEA would give me the closing brace, and I have code completion here, and also I could use the dot operator and further get code completion. So that is a very big help, I would say. So I think we are done for this one. And what else? Yes. So this here is one of the string template processor, which is defined in the Java API. Let's see what does it define. If I go to its source code, I can see that this is a variable in the interface string template. And let's see the structure of this interface. So now we have the str. Okay, yes. And what we are really concerned about in the processor is how does it combines the literal values and the variable values. So it talks about it has fragments and it has values. Fragments are the sections of the constant literals, and values are the variable values. So let me show you another method, which is the process method. No, this was not the one that I intended to. Let's go back to the class, and let me go to this and processor. Where is the where was I supposed to go? Oh my god. Okay, we'll look at this. So this is str is one of the uh, template processor which is included in Java API. We have two more. One is FMT and the other one is raw, and I have examples for that to show to you. So let me go to I can't see it here, and let's see what examples do we have here. Instance main methods, string templates, FMT example. Yes. So imagine you have okay. So this is if you have used the formatting concatenation with format specifiers before, you would know this. Imagine that you have to generate a bill for, let's say, your neighborhood art supply store, and this is the format that you're looking at. And regular I would say billing, where you have the details of a customer and then you have details of the individual items that were purchased by the person, and then the summary, of course, in a particular format. And to do that, I have multiple classes in which I have defined classes like record customer that would capture the details of a customer, order, shopping item. Nothing really fancy about it. And all the code for all the code that I would show in this session is already uploaded on IntelliJ IDEA's um, blog. I have multiple blogs to cover all these features, so that's easily accessible there, every line of code. And now in this class, I am populating all those records that I mentioned to generate the bill. So let's see, run it and see how it works. So I hope we get, yes. So let me close this one and let me make this a bit bigger. So this is how your bill would be generated if you use the string template FMT. And let me go back to the code and show how the code was. Billing with discount. So let me close these now. And we could combine multiple string processes. In this case, I have a string value in which I'm using the FMT processor. The format specifies go here right before the variable value, and the variable value could come from a method call, from a variable name, from an expression, anything that would return you a value that would be that could be used here. And here I am again using the FMT processor because I want to format each line according to a particular format. The last one is str, which doesn't format the value, just prints as they come. Now this was the FMT, which is inbuilt within the Java API. And let me talk about, let's have fun with some custom string templates, right? So I have an example of, before I show you, before I talk about this string template, custom template, let me run and show you what happens if you have this line. How would that print? So this is how it would print. Smiling, and instead of the value here, which is this value was inserted here, but the output had an emoji. So that could be one of the kind of encoding, decoding that you could use to create a new language, probably, maybe. So this is how you could create a custom string template. And let's look at the code. The code here, this implements a functional interface, and the functional interface, as I mentioned, we are talking about the fragments and the values. So the fragments here is, this is fragment 1, this is fragment 2, or should I say 0, fragment 0 and fragment 1. This is value 0 and this is value 1. And the code would would loop through the values and would determine if the emoji map contains the value which is here. So smiling face is here, that would be replaced with an emoji. And I have a wink here, and that would be replaced with this wink. So you can loop through the values and replace them. So while you would make the, while you would interpolate the values, you could change them as well. So this sounds interesting. What do we have now? Let's take a look at another interesting example for custom string templates, which is about a PDF generation. So I had this, again, I was working on creating a quiz for my daughter. And yes, so this is the question bank that I used from one of the websites. And what it had was a down arrow. And I was using a class to convert this JSON into a PDF file so that I could print that out and I could give that to my daughter. So let's first of all take a look at this class. Of course, it's a long class where I have read the JSON file, and then I'm trying to print out the questions according to a format to a PDF. Let me kind of not use the custom template that I have, because in that one I'm already replacing this down arrow key. What if I do not use this? Let's see. Um, Let me change that. So here, instead of using this custom template, let me just use str and run this class. And let's see if I get the question in the format of a PDF file or not. Yes. So it looks as if I have an exception, which I was expecting. It says the arrow down is not available in the font Times Roman encoding. Yes, I could also use explain with AI, because that would kind of help me understand if there are other solutions. Okay, so it says the encoding that I'm using, that is not probably supported by the library that I'm working with. Okay, this sounds all good. Let me close this. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going back to the class that I had, and now I'll replace my the template that I used with PDF STR. And what that is doing is, if I go here, you can see that it is trying to figure out where the down arrow key is, and then it will replace that particular text with precipitation. So at the time where the string literal values would be concatenated or interpolated with variable values, this value would be replaced with this text. So I get what I want in the right format. Let's run this code and see if we are able to generate the PDF file that I was hoping to generate. So let's see what happens. I hope I don't get errors. No. So that was a lot of logging that I did. So let's see if we already have. So we did not have questions 1.1 PDF earlier, and we do that now. So I could open in Explorer and see what values do I have here. So in this, you can see that this is a nice PDF, and here you can see the word precipitation instead of the down arrow key. So that's one of the ways you could write any custom PDF to change the variable values, what value goes in the final output. What other um, examples of interesting custom templates can I show you? Let me show you another one, which is for JSON, right? So in this, what I'm doing is processing weather data, right? So, of course, we all use JSON values all the time. So this is the code for the custom template, where I would be sanitizing the string, the value that comes in, if it has, let's say, an additional double quote. I don't want to do that. So it really depends on me what I want to do with the value which doesn't fit the format that I want. I could throw an exception. I could say remove the extra double quote. I could say do something else. That really depends on the business requirements. So in this case, let me show you the value that I've been using. Okay. Also, this is a multi-line string value, which a JSON value. I could also replace that with string template. I'll go back to the JSON example that I mentioned. I just wanted to quickly talk something about here. Uh, IntelliJ IDEA supports that, and it's a really cool feature because I could also inject language or reference. What benefit would that give me? Let's say I inject JSON here, not Josen. It has to be Jason. I'm so sorry. Type coding is fun. So what do you see here? Once you inject the JSON language in this code snippet in the string, it highlights that there's a missing comma. So once you inject language or reference, you can figure out a lot of issues that might exist with the structure of the data format that you're working with. So you can kind of fix them before you even kind of go to string templates and other things. So that's I would say is a good thing to do. Now, here, this is the JSON data that I was talking about. And this is one of the values that I mentioned. It has an extra, so this is being escaped here. So that really means that we have issue with the value. How do I want to deal with this n- value which is not formed correctly? How much time do we have? Oh my God, we've already, a lot of time has been used. Um, Now, if I go back to the code for my custom template, what I'm doing here is I have a list of sanitized values, and I, for each value that I loop through, I'm figuring out if it's a string, I need to sanitize it. And what the sanitize str method does, it's replacing a pattern with the other pattern. As I said, really depends on what your business logic is. And if it's the other type, let's say the number or the boolean, they would just kind of add the what the value was received. And if it's something other than number, boolean, or null, I just want to throw an illegal argument exception because I'm not expecting anything else here. Now, this looks good. And what else are we doing? There's another thing. Let's see what would happen if I print. So there's another thing, whether data is a type, is a record, right? So if I go to this is a record which has more records. And if I go back to process whether data, what I'm trying to do is I am combining literal values with variable values, and uh, I'm not using the return value as a string. I'm using the return value as object or instance of this record. So as I mentioned in the beginning, you don't really have to, the resultant of the interpolation is not necessarily string. It could be anything. It could be instance of any class or record that you want. And here, how do I use the custom template? I have a method here which talks about getting the JSON processor for, and here I pass the class type, and that's how it works. What about the value here? The value latitude. At present, the value is 557522, which is within the limits. What if I make it out of the range? Let's first um, run this and figure out what happens. So I'm executing the code, and let's see what happens to this XYZ variable value, sorry. So I could transform the value correctly, sanitize it, and I could use that. Now, or should I be looking at this one? Yes, here. And what happens if I change the variable value for latitude to a value that is beyond the limit or that's outside the limits? What should I be doing here? That's a question for you. Should I be browsing through the values in the code for my custom template and figure out if I see a value for number which is more than 255 or something? Or should I be doing something else? Yes, that's a trick question. What else can we do? Because in this case, I am returning an object of weather data, which is a record. I could also check the validity of the value in the record. So this is, oh my God, with I think the code is missing here, but what we could do is I could have a check here. So you really have to kind of figure out how do you handle a lot of things. You don't have to put in everything in your custom template. The record could take the responsibility as well. So um, this is looking good. I had one quick example. So I believe a lot of you would have tried out creating RAG applications. Again, that uses a lot of string concatenation. Let's say something like generating chat prompt in which you would combine variable values with constants. And if you miss let's say if you do not see the missing spaces, or if you generate the string values which are kind of have issues when we are making that combination, that could be a problem. So I think we are done with the questions that we have. uh, there was one thing that I wanted to show you. Mm, email, yes. So the interview email that I showed to you initially. In this, what I did was I have a custom, I have created a record which is interview details, and I'm storing all the details which had issues with the missing spaces and other things. So interview details are here in a record. I have another method which converts the name to initcap, and I am still using the str string processor. So I'm not creating a custom string template here. So that's how, so I talked about the anti-patterns in the beginning. So that's how we would kind of handle that part. And of course, I could add spaces here so that I know which one is, yes, the right spaces, building. And if I run this, that should generate the right email. Let's see. I hope the email is correct with a missing space. Yay! So Alice is initcap. We don't have any missing spaces, and this looks good. So there has to be a match between whether you want a custom string processor, or it's a modification with your record, or an extra method to validate the value. And going back to, so I quickly want to you to take a look at the naming or the anatomy of string templates. So str is the this, template processor. The string value, the literal value together with the template expression is referred to as template. And template expression is anything, a value that comes via a variable, which varies. Could be a method call, could be a function, not function, method call, expression, or a variable. And of course, as I mentioned, it really helps to determine the errors early and validate at the time when you are interpolating the variable values with the constants. If you, I'm not sure how many of you have worked with the data-oriented programming principles. If you have, string templates really works well. And of course, as I mentioned, prevention is better than cure. Um, it really helps to make sure the values that are entering the boundary of your applications, they are sanitized at the point when they enter the boundary, rather than you going and kind of bug fixing later. That really helps. Anti-patterns I've already talked about. So implicit classes and instance main methods. Let So as I said, this is for anyone who is starting to learn new Java language features, or the one who are teaching new Java language features. It really reduces the ceremony that is required. When I talk about implicit classes, um, uh, these are the classes which do not have a name, and instance main methods, those are different from the static main methods that we all are used to working with. So let's go to the editor and take a look. So what examples do we have here? Instance main methods. Okay, so let's start with hello world Java. This is class hello world, again full line code completion, and I could say main, and I'll just print out what do I want to print out? Hello world. And this is how we would write our initial hello world class. Now with the instance main method, implicit classes and instance main method, I could reduce a lot of keywords that I am using here, because when I start to teach anyone new, I don't have to kind of say, okay, let's not consider uh, the word static, or arguments that are passing because we're not actually using them, I could straight away delete those. So this could be an implicit class. This happens all the time because when we are creating new classes, when we get started, we don't define all the classes in a package. So that becomes a part of implicit package. So the same thing is happening here. And I could also delete things like public, static, and this could be an instance main method, and also this. And this would be easily um, execute as a single line of code. Let's see if mm, mm, okay, so mm, I think I'm running out of time here. Yes, I have a lot to cover. So this doesn't introduce a new set of tooling or a new line of compilation or execution for new learners, because I'm an educator. I would hate that to happen. Once you tell the students to follow a certain way to build and execute your code, and then you kind of change that later. No, that's not happening. So you can use Java C and Java commands to compile and execute the code. And in this case, since I've already configured IntelliJ IDEA to do that, I could simply use the IntelliJ IDEA way to do that. And here it is. So I can print out the values. This looks good, but I know it sounds a little boring. What we could do is we could talk about some more interesting examples like this one. I am sure everyone would have written this kind of a, a code snippet when you were getting started, where you are talking about assignments and simple calculations. Again, you can use the IntelliJ IDEA way to run the code. Nothing really fancy here, which um, is expected. What it really helps is you can make this as interesting as you want to. So this is still the main method. We're still talking about loops. We're talking about if conditions, but it does something really interesting. It prints a character in the shape of, it prints a letter using a different letter. So this is P using X. Of course, I could modify that, and this is something that the kids really like, to have little challenges without getting overwhelmed with the things that they do not need to know in the beginning. And there's another interesting things. As you go along, you can introduce concepts like creating of methods. I could extract this to, let's say, another method. I could say print P. And that would be such an amazing thing to introduce to new learners. What about another example? This is again an interesting example. You're still within the main class, single class, and what it does is it animates and prints a set of lines on the console. Again, interesting example, something that a lot of learners like to do. The benefit, you learn, you get a solid foundation without getting overwhelmed with a lot of concepts that you might not require when you are getting started with learning a language. So this is something that new developers, new learners really like to do. What else do we have? Let's see. We have another, so data structure lead code, if any one of you have done this. So again, yeah, this is a problem and the solution, again, all within the main class. Guessing game, would you like to play one? Let's see. Again, this is a guessing game, the typical hangman game. Let's see if we, and again, it could be, so you can see that we already have an import statement here, which is outside the main method. And so that is again one of the ways to introduce new concepts to new learners. And let's see if we would like to play. And I just did. Okay, I got confused. Okay, so this is the hangman game. If anyone would like to play with me, You just have to suggest the letter, and I would read out the letter and type in if you have any suggestions. So, no, I don't see any answers now. So, let me start with A. And okay, does anyone has any suggestion there? Okay. Do I not see any answers, or are there no answers? J. Okay. So the next is J. What else? H. Right. H and then L. Okay. Let the answers keep coming. M. Mike says M. Okay. Right. And let's try O. I've already tried Y. I think people should be able to guess it by now. Y I've already tried. Nelson says G. Um, yes, yes, I know there's a delay. Ah, David has spoiled the all the fun, right? So yes, algorithm. You got it right. So R, I, and T. Yes. So here we are, right? So thank you, David, for the answer, and it was fun. So this is the this is what I mentioned when I talked about the semantics. When we are introducing new concepts, we don't want to overwhelm the learners with the concepts that might kind of work as something as non-starters for them, and still let them enjoy and do a lot of things. So this is what I really like about instance main methods, and what happens behind the scenes. um, where are my notes? Just a moment. Yes. Um, you have once and anyone is kind of good with working with these classes. These could be, and when they are ready to take the next step, move to, let's say, working in a project where they have multiple classes. You would need multiple classes to work with, and IntelliJ IDEA could convert these implicitly declared classes into regular classes, just like that. So, of course, it is using the name of the Java source file, and then it will use the same name for the class file. And as I said, there are no separate beginner toolchain. What about the variations? What are the different variations that you could have for the instance main methods and the static main methods? So, these all are valid names. You get a compilation error because you cannot have these two together. So that would not be acceptable. Right. So what happens if there is, let's say, if we have, what about the other? If there is no main method, let's say if I change this to string, then IntelliJ IDEA would determine that there is no, okay, this was not the right one. Here, if I say int a, then I would get an error that the implicitly declared class contains no main method, and I could add a main method, right? So this one, of course, is added down here. But IntelliJ IDEA knows that if you're talking about an implicitly declared class, it should have an instance main method, and it could add one for you. And what about the let's talk about statements before decompiling an implicit class. Yes, of course. What happens here is, sorry, what happens here is we are going to, how much time do we have? My God. Mm-mm-mm. Resources is done. So I'm not supposed to drag target. And classes, guessing game. So if you decompile an implicit class, you would see that the compiler generates an implicit constructor, and that's how it works. Right. And we have two more points to cover in hardly any time. So let's see how do we work that part. Now, let me talk about a few examples for statements before super. So if you are a Java developer, I know a lot of time when you have write constructors for your derived class, and when you call the super class constructor, a lot of modifications or validations need to be done. You could be accepting data in the form of a JSON, but to pass it to the base class constructor, you might need an XML format. Or let's say you want to validate the values that you received in the derived class constructor, but there's no way you could modify the constructor of the base class. So how do you do that? We in the past we created static methods to call those on the method parameters, and then we pass them to base class constructor. This workaround, you don't need this workaround anymore, because you can write statements before super or this. Let me hop on to my IDE and show you a couple of examples here. So here we have statements before super, and in this I have an example. So this is an example of a class element in which the members are atomic number, which is int, and color. And what am I doing here is I'm only checking if color is equal to null, and I'm not checking about what happens to the variable color or the range of the uh, this instance variable. Method parameter, instance variable here. So let's see what happens when I extend the other class element. Let's assume in this case, both the classes are in the same package. I could modify the code of the element based class, but that might not happen every time you are working with such classes. You might not be able to modify the code for the base class. What happens then? In this case, the workaround is that you create a static method, and in the static method, you check the value that you are receiving in the derived class constructor, and then the result is passed to the base class constructor. That could that will change with this feature. I could inline the method, and this will work. Now, what is the benefit? Because a lot of time I hear a lot of developers saying, shouldn't the checking of the logic or the parameter shouldn't be separate and remain in the other method? Yes, it could be, but it should not kind of mess with how you are performing anything, or you should have the freedom to do so. Let me go back to what I had. I could I could say um, I could do this. I could perfectly check the range, and then I could pass the values atomic number and color to it. So this is okay. What this does is I'm checking the values before calling the superclass constructor, and it remains what should I say? It's easier to read and understand and write, and I do not need all the workarounds. So, what are the other use cases in which you might see that? So, in this case, I have an annotation for the method parameter. This doesn't always work because we know that annotations could be disabled during runtime. So, how do we go about it? In the base class, in the derived class constructor, I would need something like objects.require non-null, so that I can still ensure that the value that I'm passing to the base class constructor is not null. What are the other places that you would need statements before super? So this is again another example of element, and what am I doing here is I am using, so this is the data format that I received the value in, which is a JSON format, or it could be a comma separated value. And I would need to extract these values and then pass that to the base class constructor. So transformation of values is another scenario where you might want to use statements before super. The other example is Again, this is for records. So this is from one of the projects that I was working with. I was creating a project for my daughter in which she had to kind of identify colors, and I had hard time figuring out how to do this because I had multiple constructors in the class, and I was using different type of data types to accept the values and then passing it to create or to initialize all these values. So this was kind of a workaround which I did not like, and this is how I could do that with statements before super. So I can comment this one and uncomment this one, and this is how it works. So this is much easier to read and write, and of course maintain as well. And I'll quickly talk about one other. Um, um, okay, so this is about an enum and how you could use the same concept for an enum as well. And the last was about using, again, this is, I'm using multiple. So I'm calling this. So I could call this, I could call super, and I could have statements before that. And how does that work behind the scenes? Behind the scenes, if I could access the instruction set using Java P-C, I'm not sure if I have the time. No, I don't. To pull that out, you would notice for both the cases, the constructor of the base class is constructed at the end. So you are not kind of messing with the creation of the base class constructor. So even though the way you call these constructor or the way you call your code appears to be different, behind the scenes everything is same, and that I would say is one of the most beautiful part of how Java is evolving, because this constraint was in place since Java 1.0, and it still works with all the code base, because the language constraints have been kind of loosened, but the everything behind the scenes, it works exactly the same. You're not touching any other part of your base class and not messing it up, so you are still doing things the right way. Okay. And what about, so I think we've covered this one. What else do we have? We have the last one was statements, unnamed variables, and patterns, but we've already ran out of time. So let me quickly, and the instruction set that I mentioned, I know it's difficult to kind of read the instruction set, so you can refer to this link, which would describe in detail what each instruction set means, and it becomes such a easy to read all the instruction set, which is generated when you use Java P-C and the name of the class, the bytecode. So you would need to type industry class and not .java. So that's how you would see the instruction set. So unnamed patterns and variables, I would not have the time. So one quick point that I would like to show is how the patterns, the record patterns, or pattern matching, how formatting is really important and how that changes the readability. So when you are using records, patterns, any kind of patterns in record, pattern matching for switch and otherwise record patterns, this is something that you should be kind of mindful of. We are planning to, okay, let's not talk about things which are not final. For the last point, I don't think I have a lot of time left. So this is my blog post which talks about the unnamed local variables and patterns in Java 22. It's already up on IntelliJ IDEA's website, and you can see that the variables and patterns, pattern variables and variables which are used in, let's say, for loops or in try with resources, they can be replaced with an underscore when they are not being used. Why would they be not used? Because probably you are using this side effect of those variables and not really those variables. For an example, in this code, the try with resources, the connection variable is not being used, even though it is being used to establish the connection and logging information that connection was successful. In this case, this could be replaced with an underscore. So you don't have to read the code, which is not required, because that really boils down to your cognitive load. You have to, the IDE can generate lots of code for you. The uh, generative AI, everything can generate a lot of code for you. You have to read and understand. And if you could kind of lower the amount of code that you have to read and understand, that would be great. So that's one place where you could use uh, unnamed variables and patterns. The other example would be, I'll quickly go through because we're already 5 minutes over the hour. Um, so there's a you have to figure out if a variable is not being used. Is that a code smell, or is that something that you could replace with an underscore so that you don't have to kind of burden yourself with knowing what it does. So that's the thing that you would have to work with. So in this case, I have a pattern matching with switch, and the variables that I'm not using here, like X variable, this is record pattern. If these values are not being used, I could replace that with an underscore, which is shown in this GIF. So unused patterns, but they cannot be done away with because that's the language syntax. But in this case, again, we're talking about record patterns. Some of the variables are not being used, and I could replace that with an underscore. Also, again, something that you need to balance is, do you need record patterns, or do you just need the name of the record? I mean, I'm so sorry, I'm missing the name here, but everything is here right in my blog, and you can view that, read that. All the code is available as well. And as I mentioned, you can remove, you can use if the loop variable is not being used. Let's say if this is the code and this loop was variable was being used initially, but let's assume instead of printing the number here, you want to replace that and print, let's say, any constant value. What happens to the loop variable? It's no longer being used. So that could be replaced with an underscore. What other places? Um, Again, we use that a lot of time, exception handlers, where the exception variable is not being used. Again, that could be replaced with an underscore. That would be referred to an unnamed variable. Of course, that means you cannot use it any longer. We already covered this part. We already I already talked about when unused variable could be a code smell. So if a variable is not being used in your code base, you have to figure out whether it's a code smell. If yes, refactor your code, modify it so that the code base is how it should be. You shouldn't be kind of pointing fingers at this feature and saying, "Oh, I have a lot of code smell because thanks to this feature." No. That's not how it's done. So again, I have another example, and I think we, yes, already over the hour. So that's the last slide. Do not abuse features, and you don't always need new Java features to improve things. So use the features wisely, and that is the last slide that I have. And with that, let me remove my stream screen from the stream. Okay, and with that, let's see if we have any questions. Lot of questions. Um, so yes, and before I start answering the questions, let me, yes, if anyone, please feel free to share your feedback. I'm also posting a link here so that you could use this. That really, the feedback really helps us to improve our sessions, the future sessions. So thanks, Lakshmi, for your compliment. Thanks, Nafel. Thanks, Jürgen, if I'm saying that right. Thanks, David. Thanks, boss. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for answering the question. Thanks, Mike. Um, oh, Chandra is here. Thanks, Mike. So, unnamed variables, that was good. Thanks, Chandra. Validating, yes. Okay. So do we have any questions? The Java flow anti-pattern occurs. Examples of anti-pattern. Okay, so Nelson was answering one of the questions because of the questions that was asked by Divya. Right. So with record constructive validations, right? Where world is a variable in the context. So Jeffrey mentioned, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. And this question is regarding revisiting the string templates in 23. If that's the question, no, that would not be previewed in 23 because as I mentioned in the link that I showed, it is by Brian Gates, and he mentions that there will be a lot of changes. He calls that an overhaul, and you would see string templates in 24, not 23. Divya, I'm running out of time, so I cannot explain string interpolation once again. You can check out the blogs that we already have on IntelliJ IDEA's YouTube channel. In short, I could say it's about the embedding of variable values within the string literal values. So you would need this situation at a lot of time at a lot of places. So Abhish says these string templates are very useful, but I wonder if we can display that in the UI. What kind of UI are you talking about? Mm-mm. I'm kind of losing the context here. So I'll have to take the next question, which is by Loic. Is the ability to insert local variables using inside a string? For instance, in JavaScript, you can write hello $world. So Loic, this is, if you go back to the examples that I was talking about, the the syntax for embedding the variable values is different here in Java. So it's a backslash with the braces, but as I mentioned, using a lot of examples, it not only embeds the values, you can have a lot of checks when the interpolation occurs. You can create custom string templates and you can use the inbuilt ones. So that is how it is. Process method. So Peter is asking, Java finally has string interpolation. Yes, it does. That was introduced as a preview language feature in 21. Okay. Thank you, Nelson. I really appreciate that. The numbers. Okay. Why is it out of range? Question. Right. What is the error in latitude? So, spaces. I think Boss replied to the comments, and I think we are done with answering all the questions. So thank you everyone for watching and for your time. And so we move to the next slide. Yes, thanks everyone watching here, listening. I hope you were able to learn at least one new thing today. And if for more information, do not miss to follow our the other links that are already up on the slide. And again, thanks again for being here, for subscribing to our channel, for liking the video, and for just being here. Thank you so much. And until next time, bye-bye.